So opportunity, that's a nice way of saying it, as opposed to like sales pitch and marketing, sales funnels and lead generation funnels, right? But the opportunity for different practices. When I heard you talk down in Atlanta at the VIPL convention, I thought you did a really good job of like, bringing up probably different areas of opportunity a lot of practices haven't thought of. For instance, like how to maximize profitability per hour per room, and then that kind of gives the injectors or owners or doctors or whoever it may be that's overseeing this, whether it's a single owner operator or a multi-location practice, a way for them to break down profitability.
Sure.
And I was amazed by how many had questions about that. And I could kind of tell in that room of like 75 to 100, however many were there, like majority of them, it felt like hadn't thought about it that way. Like they thought about, I'm doing good because I'm making however much per hour on Botox or Dysport or VIP or whatever, but they hadn't really thought about coupling packages together, and building basically a plan for their practice to make more. So what are some of the areas of opportunity on maximizing per hour, per room? And also, we'll talk about brand next, because I think that's a big opportunity area. But I don't know, what's kind of whenever you get up there and give these talks to everyone, what's your talk on opportunity for how they can grow their practice?
Okay. So first, I think it's important, in 2021, I believe, the global aesthetic industry was $89 billion globally. In 2030, it's projected to be $300 billion. Wow. So opportunity is endless. It's not going anywhere. No one's going to stop caring about their looks. That's the first thing. So with regard to opportunity per room, so I am not a solo treatment person. I firmly believe that 0 modalities is not good. 1 is better than 0. 2 is better than 1. 3 is better than 2. Same thing why you can't do the same workout all the time and expect, eventually you're going to plateau, and your skin does the same thing. You're going to build a resistance to certain things. Even with Botox, if you constantly get Botox or any neurotoxin, you're eventually going to see that it starts to last a little bit less and less every time because your body is metabolizing it faster and you're becoming used to it. So you have to change it up. So I am not a huge solo combo person, a solo treatment person. I'm a big combination therapy person. A, I believe it's the best results for your patient, and B, it's what ensures on a business standpoint that your patient keeps coming back, which is what we want. So a lot of people, no matter what, your largest portion of patients are going to be injectables. No matter what. So your toxin patients, typically, not everyone's a filler patient, but your toxin patients are going to be the largest majority of your patients at any office. So finding out how to capitalize on that is important, because the majority of toxin patients come in and get their Botox, and providers don't even spend time telling those patients everything else, or what Botox can actually do versus what it doesn't do. And so Botox patients, or I shouldn't just say Botox, any toxin patient typically does not necessarily mean they're an aesthetic patient. Okay, they just come in for the toxin and then they leave. So the statistical average of patients who come in for Botox are 1.7 times a year. That's not good. Every office will have patients who come in 3 to 4 times a year, once every 3 months as recommended, but that's not the majority. The majority is 1.7 times a year, which is bad. We need to see you more often than that, especially if you want to make money in your business. So a lot of people also don't know what the average ROI per hour per room an office should be generating. What do you think? Or you worked at an aesthetic practice. What was the, if you were to think the average return per hour per room, what do you think that should be?
I'm gonna have to cut this pause out. I don't know, like a percentage wise or a number?
Number. How much money do you think per hour per room your patient or your office should be generating.
So I don't think we should cut out your hesitation. I mean,
I know. I agree. A lot of
because
people don't
I
know.
was going to say, my experience, and Janice knows more than I do.
don't know.
This is kind of the general answer I get.
This is where everyone gets stuck because practices will run in. Do you have a guess?
Like
$1,000.
Okay, that's a very good guess. No one ever guesses that close, but that's
I
a
was
very
gonna
good
guess
guess.
way lower. Okay.
What
I
were
didn't
you
say
gonna
anything.
What were you gonna guess?
Just a couple hundred at least.
Okay. All right. Most people are in the 250 to 300 range. All right. The average per room per hour is 750 is where we want you. So that was a very good guess. The problem is this. You will never get to that number if you're doing solo treatments. Okay. Combo treatment could be toxin filler. That's 2 modalities, completely different. But if you're not doing both, okay, so toxin per hour you will, because most offices, like if they're experienced injectors, they'll book their toxin appointments in either 15, 20, or 30-minute appointments. So per hour, they are generating that 750 plus. But let's talk on the aesthetic side. Let's talk esthetician-wise, because that's where that 750 matters. If you're doing a hydrofacial for an hour at 350, doesn't mean it's a bad treatment. It just means you're not maximizing and being where your office should be to make a genuine return on your investment. Because every office, first of all, people forget about the overhead. All right. You not only have payroll and rent and utilities and all that kind of stuff, but you have machines. You have that device payment that is like a mortgage every single month. And what happens oftentimes is a lot of crediting companies or financing companies that can do these devices or finance them will either give you 0% for X amount of months, or they'll do like a 6-month deferred payment. So you only start paying. And that's where people forget or make a mistake. They're like, oh, I don't have to pay, but then they don't bank it, right? They don't make the money they need to be able to pay, because it takes about 6 months to launch a new device in an office, because patients are, especially if it's new technology. If it's older technology, fine, maybe 3 months, but getting your office trained, getting everyone on board, which is treatment providers, estheticians, your front desk, your medical assistants, your marketing people, your practice administration. I mean, literally everyone has to be on board. That's also where offices make a huge mistake, is there's no communication. The only way you can get to the numbers that you need to get to really is through combination therapy. And so the way that with the opportunity, patients don't know what they want until we tell them what they need, which is, like I said earlier, they're sort of asking our permission for them to spend their money with us and for it to be okay for them to do the treatments. So there's lots of ways you can do it. Like I said, I like to lead and train through education. So I will never go in and tell someone you need this and this and this and this and this and this and this. You do have to be somewhat conscious of budget, but a good provider will never cater to a patient's budget, because a good provider will tell the patient what they need to get the best result. I promise you, they will find the money if it's important enough to them. And I'll tell you a story about that in just a second. But so I always like to position things. Too many options is never good. Too little option is never good. So I always position combination therapy through a good, better, best approach. And what I mean by that is a patient comes in and they ask for toxin. That's a good treatment. You give them the toxin. It's a good treatment, okay? But we all know, like at VIPL, we have something called our Tox Booster Study, and it's a combination same day VIPL and immediately after you do the toxin. And the reason why that's important, the RPL does not add, if at most would add 10 minutes, but for an experienced injector, if they book a 15, 20-minute appointment, they're done injecting in 5 minutes, maybe 10. RPL takes roughly 7 minutes to apply, and the MA or whoever can prep the skin for the injector, or they can go to the aesthetic side first, have it done, and then move over. But our whole Tox Booster study came about because we sent out a survey to clients, and the survey said, of your patients who get toxin, how many come back 100% satisfied? What do you guys think the answer was, percentage-wise?
50, half and half.
Okay,
I would say like a little over 50.
a little over 50. 30%.
Wow.
30% of patients came back 100% satisfied.
Wow.
All right. So then we said, why? What is happening? And we got two main reasons. The first reason we got was purely in the room, right? Provider-driven education. Patients think Botox cures cancer, right? They think toxin will take away everything. I always use my big fat Greek wedding with the Windex, like put some Windex on it. That's how people are with toxin, like put some Botox on it. So that was an in-office educational aspect of what can toxin actually do versus what can it not do. All right. Toxin will never pull pigment out of the skin. Chemical peels will never paralyze the muscle. You're not competing. So I always say a rising tide lifts all boats. And if you're not using everything in your arsenal, you're doing a disservice. So the second reason, which is the one we chose to focus on, that patients were dissatisfied, was because of this. Has anyone ever told you to stop getting older?
No.
No, they would say grow up.
I'm telling myself that now.
No one says to
myself
you,
now.
you know what? Don't have another birthday. That's insane, right? We don't stop aging. You can age gracefully. I know it's crazy to say this, without Botox. You shouldn't, but you can, all right? You can. There is something we do tell you to stop doing. What is that?
Thinking that you're going to stop aging.
That's true. We tell you to stop sitting in the sun. Get out of the sun. We don't tell you to stop getting older. We do tell you to stop getting in the sun. The sun does far more damage than the natural aging process. A lot of people don't even know what sun damage entails. Sun damage entails tone, texture, pore size, collagen and elastin stimulation, pigmentation, of course, which is the beast of all beasts, plus lots of other things, porphyrins or bacteria on the face. There's so many different things that sun damage entails. So patients were coming in for toxin thinking it was going to treat all of that. And then there's only one thing toxin does. It's going to treat the superficial fine lines and wrinkles, and it's going to freeze your muscle. So two things. So patients were coming in for their follow-up, and they were like, ugh, I still look old. I still look dull. Once we fix one thing, we focus on the next thing that bothers us. So what was happening is the patients thought the fine lines and wrinkles were making them look older. It wasn't. We fixed those, and they still felt old. But once we treated the sun damage, they felt much better. So we said, we can do this on the same day. Our peels have phenol in it. Phenol acts as a vasoconstrictor. Most chemical peels, if we've all seen that Sex and the City episode of Samantha, they vasodilate, right? They make you red and flushed. We vasoconstrict, which means we minimize the chance of pinpoint bleeding after with toxin after peeling. So you immediately apply the peel, and then right after you inject. But the whole point of that goes to combination therapy. We're not adding much more time onto your treatment, and on average, our peels are $350 a peel. You're literally adding $350 of revenue, okay, for almost no time added. And it's not a heavy skill set either. So it's not like you have to go to huge lengths to train people on how to do it. Which is what you have to factor in and think about when you're bringing on a new service or something. So with that being said, I always go back to the good, better, best approach. And it all comes down to education. Someone comes in saying, oh, I don't like my fine lines and wrinkles. Okay, we can treat you with Botox. That's a good treatment. All right. A better treatment would be, let's kill multiple birds with one or two stones, toxin and peel. We're treating tone, texture, pore size, pigmentation, collagen and elastin. We're treating your fine lines and wrinkles. We're treating the muscles, so we're going to correct. But Botox is a Band-Aid, but that's a better treatment. The best treatment would be, let's say, some toxin, some chemical peel to address the skin, and maybe some filler or some microneedling or whatever that patient's major issues are. Now, the reason I always say good, better, best is because a patient coming in asking for a good treatment, if you position the good at the bottom, right? No one wants the bottom of the line. Immediately they'll say, you know what? Not everyone can afford the best. Most people will take the better, which means just by positioning it, right? It's never what you say, it's always how you say it. Just by positioning it, they're going to increase their ROI because they're going for something they would have never gone for before. We think, okay, someone comes in asking for this, let's give them what they ask for. We don't even know if that's the issue that they really are focused on. People think, my favorite are patients who diagnose themselves. They're like, oh, I need 40 units of toxin. What?
How do you know you need 40 units?
Right.
Yeah.
You need 140 units of toxin. But it's like people don't know, but everyone likes to be their own diagnostician. So it's increasing that ROI is so important. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the same day, but nobody should be selling anything outside of like plastic surgery. I'm talking recurring aesthetic treatments. No one should be selling them in ones. If you sell a la carte services, you're shooting your office in the foot. A lot of people will be like, yeah, but if they just buy one, then they'll buy more. Some people that works with, but we're trying to change, and this goes into combination therapy. We're trying to change the talk track of aesthetics from everyone thinks because aesthetics is cash, that it's optional, okay? Or it's vanity, right? Mm-hmm. Aesthetics is treating your skin. Your skin is an organ, which means providers have to stop positioning their treatment protocol as an option and start positioning it as a prescription, because you are a provider prescribing treatment for that condition. So I'll use this example. If you go get a physical and your doctor says, all right, I ran all your blood work, your stress test, you need some cholesterol medication, you need something for high blood pressure, and you need a blood thinner. Are you going to look at your doctor and say, which one do I need first? Or, nope, I can only afford one of those. Which one should I get? You pick.
Yeah.
Or would you go to the pharmacy and say, you know what, I'm only going to get one? It's the same thing. Why are people so afraid to be confident and prescribe treatment? Because it's a cash-based industry and people don't like asking for money. But when you don't ask for money, you devalue your treatment, right? You're not a Walmart, right? You don't price match. The best providers typically cost the most because they have a reputation for being the best. And guess what? They don't discount their pricing. Chanel, over COVID, there were so many supply chain issues, right? Chanel increased their pricing by like 30%. Do you know what happened to their sales? They increased. For a bag. This is your skin. Like, why do you want to not pay to get the best who's not just your skin, manipulating your face and your looks? And when things go wrong, they go really wrong. So people forget to medically credential. Everyone wants to be a people pleaser, right? Which means we don't want to ask for too much. Would you go into Hermes and say, you know what, can I get this Birkin on a discount? First of all, you couldn't even get into Hermes, but let's say
Like,
Louis
I probably won't ever go
Vuitton.
there.
Would you go to Louis Vuitton and be like, you know what, I can't do this. Can you do 800 for this Neverfull?
Louis Vuitton.
Like, are you kidding me? No. So why do we treat our skin any differently? It's more valuable than Louis Vuitton. It stays with us a lot longer. And if we're good to it, it'll stay in good condition. So you can buy discounted Louis Vuitton, but it's going to be used or fake. Same thing with your skin. There's a reason botched is a whole treatment, is a whole series on TV and has been for years. So with that, one of the things people mistake when they don't do combination therapy is they'll put their pricing on their website. And that's a big problem because all that does, or they'll give pricing over the phone. That's a big problem too, because then you tell your patient, this is my pricing, feel free to shop around. Whereas you don't tell your patient, I can't see you through the computer and I can't see you over the phone, which means I can't give you a full, comprehensive, customized assessment. It takes the expertise factor out of it and makes you a commodity, right? Commodities compete on pricing, brands compete on intangibles. Francois Kressel says that. He's the CEO, was the CEO of Prada. He always says, brands compete on intangibles, commodities compete on pricing. Think of many places that you go to that you'll pay more because the service is better, or you don't mind paying more because the service is better, the experience is better. What's your brand? What feelings does it invoke when you think about that? You know, think of, where did you have a bad experience? Just throw out somewhere, anywhere.
I know I've had one.
If you have, right? We all have. Yeah. My thing is this, I go shopping, all right? I know I've never shopped before. But I'll go shopping. My parents are local business owners. We own small gourmet gift stores. If I walk into a store and I have not been greeted by someone in that store in the first 10 seconds, I will not buy anything from that store. Now, if they're visibly dealing with something or they're the only person there and it's super busy, fine. But if there's multiple people there, like for instance, think of Pretty Women, right? Big mistake. Right? You can never, that's also another thing patients, offices do, which is a huge mistake with regard to price. The most insulting thing you can ever do to a person is assume they don't have the money. If we saw Warren Buffett walking down the street, we would be like, look at that schlub, right? He doesn't dress particularly well. He drives his old beat up Ford pickup truck he's had since 1970 something, yet he's one of the wealthiest men in the world. You can never assume that your patients don't have the money, which means you have to believe in your skill set and your service and your product enough to, you're devaluing it by discounting it, right? Or price matching, or, you know, you give pricing over the computer or over the phone. No one ever needs just one treatment, ever. There is no such thing. You can treat anything once, you cannot correct. If you want correction, which most people do, a minimum of 3 treatments for each service. So here's what happens. Just by doing a simple combination, let's say toxin and VI peel, or toxin and a chemical peel, just by doing that simple one, all right, most people, we learned, come in 1.7 times a year for toxin. So what happens is a patient will come in, they'll get a huge dose of toxin, let's say 60 units. They'll wait 6 to 9 months until it's all worn off and then some, and then they'll come in for another big treatment, which means they're spending a lot of money, which means there's not a lot of money for other things. Whereas if you just came back regularly, so a corrective series of chemical peels, and I use chemical peels because it's an easy add-on that isn't a huge expense, right? If you're spending $400 on toxin, an extra $300, if you're priced at $350, you can easily go $299 at a discount with the toxin. It's not a big jump. And it forces them to focus on their skincare. But what happens is this, your patient comes in, they get their peel and toxin the first time, all right? But you've now sold them a series of 3 peels because we only sell in packages of 3. Mm-hmm. You could do 1, but I promise if you do 1, they're going to come back wanting more. And they come back a month later, 4 weeks, for their second peel. And their toxin is still beautiful. Great. Then they come back for their final peel, which is 8 weeks after their initial peel. And maybe they've started to get just the slightest movement, right? That was the first thing we both said today. I'm starting to move, right? We want to be frozen. Not everyone likes to be frozen, but most people get toxin for a reason. And maybe they're starting to just get a little bit of movement. And then they say, you know what? Might as well do a little touch up.
I'm already here.
A little 20 unit touch up is also easier to digest on the wallet than a whole 60 unit mammoth dose. All right. So there's that. And then they say, you know what? This chemical peel has now forced me to focus on my skin. Toxin, you don't have to focus on your skin. It's just a Band-Aid. So then they say, you know what? I don't have skincare products. Maybe I should get some, because when you do a peel, you have a post-care kit, which includes a cleanser and some sunscreen and a couple other things. It forces you to focus on your skin. So on average, people who combo just a chemical peel and toxin same day, their patients will on average buy an extra 30 units of toxin a year and an extra $1,500 a year in product spend. Product sales is where most people in businesses in our industry fail. No one has ever said, no, I'm really good with product sales. I'm good. I don't need any help. Everyone wants to sell more product. There's not a huge margin in them. And you want to sell more product. It just is what it is. So that would be your better treatment. You've now created a patient to come back more and more, which means the more they're in front of you, the more you have an opportunity to sell them, the more they'll fall in love with you, the more they'll buy. You know, they'll say certain things that you can pick up on. You build the relationship with them. You call them and say, hey, we're getting this new treatment or new product. You're a VIP. Why don't you come in and try it out and see it and blah. You know what? I'll give you 20% off your first treatment. And now they're buying things they would have never bought ever. And they're liking it because it's actually good for them and they're using it. So that's where combination therapy is so important with regard to your ROI, but also having your patients fall in love with other products and services in your office that they never would have thought of, because there is not one treatment that fixes everything. Right. I wish there was. But there's not one treatment that can do what toxin does. There's not one treatment that can do what toxin does and what a chemical peel does. There's not one treatment that does toxin, chemical peel results, and microneedling or ablative laser or whatever you might need, PRP, hair growth. I mean, there's so many different things you can talk about. So if you're not comboing, we need to get you there.
And that's pretty important to talk about with the marketing side and advertising side, because you have the, cost per acquisition is what we're always trying to factor out with lead generation. So we bring a customer in, how much does that cost to buy them, right? And the challenge is if you have a high turnover, they come in once or 1.7 times a year, well, how much did you pay for that customer? And if you get in really competitive markets, like the bigger cities, for instance, so many of these, I mean, the amount of customers that VIPL has alone, and you look at all these other providers of chemical peels where, there's thousands and thousands in the United States alone. Yeah. So you have a lot of options. So now that price is being driven up on buying Google ads or Facebook or Instagram or billboards or TV or radio, whatever it may be, you really have to look at retaining that patient, that customer. Because if you pay that amount and then they go out the door or go down the road to someone who is offering really that procedure you're talking about, by procedure I mean not just the service, but their whole sales procedure, training of the front desk, training of the person with their bedside manner to keep them within their business. It's really important now that competition is being driven up.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a couple of rules. Rule number one is you always farm before you fish, right? It costs 5 to 7 times more to bring in a new patient than it does to retain an existing patient, first of all. Which means most people have not properly segmented their database, and that's where they need professionals to come in and help them, because there's even if it's just basic like EMR system and running reports, people don't know. If you're not auditing your business at least on a weekly basis, we have a problem. I always say when I do talks, I'm like, if you can't tell me your top 3 procedures right now, we need to take a look at how often you're auditing your business. I had a business that, an office I was working with that They hadn't audited their aesthetics department in a big dermatology practice, hadn't audited their aesthetics department in years. There was an esthetician over 2 years who had given away over $150,000 of free laser hair removal. All right. You have to be, and again, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not tech savvy, I don't know how to do it. Hire somebody. Hire a marketing company to come in and segment this database for you. We segment via age, via gender, via socioeconomic status. We segment via average spend in your office. We segment, so many different things that are so important. And so that farm before you fish. And then there's always the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your revenue is driven by 20% of your patients. And people get scared by that because if you think about it, it's scary on how much money you spend trying to get new patients, but they're not targeting it. They're trying to do it by themselves. And very few offices have. Usually what happens in an aesthetic office is they'll hire somebody and maybe they'll be hired for, I don't know, cosmetic coordinator. They end up being the marketing person. They end up being the cosmetic manager. They end up being the coordinator, checking inventory. They end up having to create flyers and ads, also worry about external marketing and internal marketing. I had an office once that sent out an ad for Cool Sculpting and immediately got 3 emails back saying, can you please remove my mother from your list? She's been dead for 4 years. They hadn't segmented their database in 4 years from living and deceased. Yep. Like, hello, we should probably send to people who are alive. You pay for that storage. We're not sending vaginal rejuvenation to males. We're not sending penile enhancement to female. You have to be able to manage it. You can't manage what you can't measure. And if you're not hiring or if you're not spending a lot of people will spend all this money on Google ads or they'll spend all this money on Instagram ads, targeted ads. They're great if you have people to guide you and direct you. They all run on algorithms. If you don't, marketing companies are pushed higher onto the algorithm, which means if you're using a marketing company, it's better than if you're buying individual ad space, because it's just how it's, y'all know more about this than I do, but why are you going to spend money and not get any return? And it's because a lot of offices try to do it themselves and they don't realize, hey, just when it comes to even like Google AdWords, there are words, and that's why it's important too to get a marketing company that is kind of a one-stop shop that can manage a lot of things for you, because the more telephones you have, the more chance of things getting misconstrued and lost and miscommunication and all that. So if you have someone that can build your website and do your SEO and your AdWords and, manage press release or, all these, help create content and all these different things, which y'all do, it makes, as someone who used to manage an office, it makes your life so much easier, because I would have to talk to 75 different people and then try to coordinate them to all talk to each other.
It builds a stronger brand, like we were talking about, or what we want to talk about. It's so much of what, a lot of times people don't realize what feels wrong about an experience, whether it's a website, like UI, UX, or user interface, user experience. A lot of people don't even know why it feels wrong. But if you have a website that doesn't function properly, so colors don't match, buttons don't go to a certain place, you get there, it feels wonky, like that actually lose consumer confidence and trust, which is so much like actually converting into a lead. But then even into like the small nuances of, say they fill out a lead generation form and it goes to the office and they reply with an email, and so that email's themed and it doesn't match the brand of the website, or they come inside of the office and like the office colors and their business cards, the letterhead, none of it matches, that actually it won't help. It will actually break consumer confidence, and make them be like, oh, is this place actually professional?
Right. And it's all part of the experience. Like my biggest thing, and again, when I started in this industry, and I don't know a quarter of what you guys know with regard to the marketing and all that kind of stuff, but when I started in this industry, it was, the interface for cell phones was not as advanced as it is now. And my biggest thing was, is the website compatible on the cell phone, right? That's a huge thing because I'm not a very patient person. And if I was trying to pull up a website and like the website on the, I don't even know what you call it, the computer website versus the cell phone website, the buttons were misplaced, or it looked, like you said, I would be like, ooh, this looks cheap, I don't want to go here. You have to be compatible with that. Or, even as simple as it seems, statistically, the offices that have a chat line in their web page can be more successful than ones that don't, because it just makes it feel more engaged. Little things like that matter. And like you were saying, color. When, one of the things is people always try to build their business before they build their brand. And I always say that's like getting on the road without a map. Because the business is, people want to bring in revenue and they have bills to pay. And so they want to do that, but they have no direction. So oftentimes you'll see lots of aesthetic businesses rebranding all the time, right? We rebranded, we changed our colors, we rebranded. Well, if you rebranded, but you still don't have a real brand, you're just rebranding the business, you're going to be doing it again in another 2 to 3 years. And that means questions that you need, for instance, a marketing company to help you segment, but questions like, who is your target database? Where is your target database? Do you geofence? Do you do all these other things that can help you get that target database? So location and who it is, down to what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none? Or pick your top 3 procedures that you really want to throw out. Do you, what AdWords are you using? Do you want to highlight the discount? Do you want to highlight sale or discount, or, certain words that will bring you a clientele that are usually one-time shoppers, not repeat lifetime shoppers? I mean, there's, retention is the whole point of our industry, is to get the same people coming back and trying new things, obviously to get new people also. But the most successful businesses have had patients coming to them for years. And that all goes to also communication with, the most successful businesses don't have a lot of turnover. And that's with any industry. And you can sort of see that based off of their website. Sometimes I have to go as basic to ask as, who has a website? And you'll be surprised how many people are like, oh, I don't have time for it. Okay, well, when I was at my old office, they were spending $20,000 a month on billboards. Well, guess what? It's illegal to use your phone when you drive, which means I see a billboard. I have no way of either writing it down because I'm driving, or I pick up my phone and I risk getting a ticket. So guess what? I pass it. Certain areas, billboards are still effective. Mine was in Atlanta proper. Everyone's angry and miserable because we're all stuck in traffic all the time, and we're all tailgating each other. And if we're not tailgating each other, we're bottlenecking the accident because we're so nosy that we're trying to see what is happening. We're not writing that down. And so what is more effective for your office, right? Who are you trying to reach, and are you using effective methods of communication? You could be speaking in English and they might only understand Chinese. It's like, what's your love language, right? You got to be speaking the same language. And with advertising, you can't stick to one modality. You have to try multiple things, see what works for you and what doesn't. I was more of a creative advertiser, I guess you can say, with regard to, not creative, adventurous. I tried different things that may not have necessarily, some of them worked, some of them didn't, but you don't know if you don't try. And you also don't know, and again, different mediums. 10 years ago, Instagram, you wanted to do Facebook ads 10 years ago. Now that's pretty much irrelevant. Especially in our industry, it's Instagram and TikTok. Well, guess what? TikTok wasn't around then. You have to be able to morph and change with the times, especially with technology changing, and you can't do that. We're in an industry where we're trying to run so many different things at one time. If you're not using a company or you're not using people that specialize in the technology, which is running our entire world, you have a problem.
Yeah. And coupling your business with, consultants or agencies or whoever that ask you questions like, what's your goal? And then help you build that strategy. That's one of the first questions we ask. Like, what's your goal for your business? Is it multiple locations? Is it expanding from plastic surgery over to aesthetics? That way you have a way to offset your down season. So if you're coming in for breast dog during the wintertime, but then the summertime you don't see them and they're waiting to get a facelift next winter, that's where you have estheticians, do all these recurring procedures. Do you want 5 locations, 6 locations, or do you just want to be a small mom and pop that has like a solid consumer-based customer, patient, whatever you want to call them? I say consumer, that sounds very shallow. But, helping these companies really build that strategy. A lot of them don't think about it.
They don't.
They just like, we want to start injecting or putting face peels or whatever it may be, or even new plastic surgeons coming out. They did their fellowship, now ready to go start their own practice in a new town. It's like, well, how do you get to those goals of adding on? You really need people that specialize in consulting with the front desk, consulting with the stuff we've talked about today as far as maximizing ROI, and also consulting, building that brand, making sure it's a brand that's scalable. Otherwise, you can just be throwing dollars at things and hoping it works.
Right. And all those things you just mentioned is building your brand, identifying, like you said, do you want to be a solo office? Do you want to be a multi-office practitioner? Do you want to specialize in breast dogs? Do you want to specialize in whatever it is? Like you have to identify yourself. I think at the end of the day, we're all looking for identity. Sure. And so are businesses. They need an identity in order to thrive. You have to identify your business, location, geographic location, like where are you on the street? Are you in a place that is a high traffic? Do you want lots of traffic? Like you want to go to a high tourist area, which means you're not probably going to get very many repeat customers. You may get, or do you want to, be a little more exclusive and be kind of maybe hidden, or, do you want to just that? There is no wrong answer. By walking into your office, do you want your website? Do you want it to be a little bit more colorful and spa-like, or do you want it more clinical and med-like? I mean, and that goes with decorating your spa. That goes with fragrances. It goes as down to a fragrance. Like one of the things I always ask people when they're like, Janis, I'm really trying to build my brand. I say, okay, when you think of fall, what do you think of? So I'll ask you, when you think of fall, what do you think of?
Pumpkin spice latte.
That's perfect. Okay. What do you think of?
Trees changing.
Trees changing color. Okay.
Two-stroke dirt bikes.
I don't even know what that is.
Redneck stuff.
Okay.
You'll learn.
You'll learn.
Yeah.
Okay. When I think of fall, it's not just what I'm seeing. It's not just the leaves changing or football. It's football season, right? It's what do you taste when you think of it?
It's a
you
feeling,
taste a pumpkin spice latte. What do you smell? I smell a cinnamon candle, or a bonfire, or it's all these things invoke a brand. It's you walk into, what is the One Hotel? Everyone wants the One Hotel's fragrance. That is their fragrance. And they have developed a whole, there's a company called Aroma 360 with, do you want your house to smell like the One Hotel lobby? Like, can you think about that, having a brand that identifiable that you want your house to smell like that location? Mm-hmm. I bought it. I'm not going to lie. I bought it because I did. I love it. It's so nice. It's a good winter. It's a good summer. It's whatever it is. You have to, think about all these things. Do you want, to be more, some people will say, when you're building an aesthetics practice, do you want every person in your office to be picture perfect? Or do you want to have real people, like real looking people? There is no right or wrong answer. It's what you want to invoke. Some people will have, and a lot of that depends on your location, like picture perfect models that sort of look like they've had filler and toxin and their hair's pristine and they're, as down to, I personally think it's always a nice touch if your office has matching scrubs. You know, at the pediatrician, we would go and Nurse Bonnie would have Winnie the Pooh and Nurse Angie would have Mickey Mouse and whatever. And that was fun. That's a pediatrician's office. How do you want it to be seen and invoked, and what feelings? Do you want people to come into your office and say, okay, I'm coming here to relax? Or do you want to say, okay, I'm coming here to get a medical treatment?
Or even the demographic of
Yeah.
where they are in the country. So
100%.
what an LA office will look like for plastic or cosmetic versus Atlanta or Chattanooga or
Yeah.
Illinois or New York. They're all going to vary on what, even how the advertising looks for that practice, because LA is going to look way different than, say, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So our ads are going to have to look different versus LA.
Yeah. 100%. And if you're trying to build a scalable brand, a multi-location office, well, your prices in LA are not going to be your prices in Chattanooga.
Right.
So they'll go to your office, they'll go to your website. God forbid you have pricing on your website and they see Chattanooga pricing in the LA office. You have to honor it. What are you going to say? Sorry, that's for our Chattanooga office. Yeah, you could, but guess what? That's your fault for advertising it.
Yeah.
It's not their fault for finding the information.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the reason why, you talked about rebranding, but they forget about brand reputation when they rebrand. So we worked a lot with other practices that display their prices, and it allows people to shop.
Yeah.
I think allowing people to shop is a little bit more risky than allowing your customers to trust you.
100%.
So your brand reputation matters more.
Yeah.
And whenever we start, a new website, we always ask for content. Let us educate whoever you want to come into your office, so they have a good idea of who your doctors are, their certifications. So I think that's really important to push.
And that's such an important point also. I don't want to go into an office if they don't have their doctors or treatment providers pictured on their website.
Yes.
I want to know, or at least have a feeling like I know who this is, first of all, aesthetics is a very emotional journey, okay? You're dealing with people's, and it has to be treated with the care and respect that it deserves, because you're dealing with people at their most insecure, deep-rooted, painful problems that they see. And it's not just like, oh, my tummy hurts, I go to the doctor. It's, okay, this has bothered me for so long, and maybe I got teased and bullied and made fun about it, that now I'm coming in because I didn't have the funds, and now I do have the funds, and now I'm coming in to do something about it. But this is something that is so deeply personal to people. You're dealing with how, some people identify themselves with how they look, right? If you don't get braces and you have buck teeth and kids are cruel, or you have acne growing up, which we all suffer from issues like that. I mean, I look at some of like the 8th graders nowadays and I'm like, I did not look like that in 8th grade.
They're not having their awkward phase.
I kind of want them to, because then it's like you're like, okay, I came
Be real.
somewhere.
Yeah.
But like I've never seen, like, they don't look the way we looked growing up. Yeah. And, that also, has issues in and of itself. But you definitely want to make sure that you are helping people with these deep insecurities and you're treating them as such. So you want to have a personal aspect to it. You don't want to feel like you go into an office and you'll just see the first provider available. You want to feel like you're important and you're being treated and your issues are being handled with delicately, like they should.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point.
And you mentioned, 8th graders.
Yeah.
So I think there's also a generational evolution here where, middle schoolers are aiming for Prada and Supreme now before even getting there.
Yeah.
So this constant evolution needs to be reflected into how you're portraying yourself through your brand. And, it's crazy how kids are appealing more to the higher end than like your Targets and Walmarts.
Yeah. Well, and it is. You have to look at your brand and say, okay, where is majority of my target base coming from, and am I advertising to them, right? So if, just like with the brand recognition, if you're not adjusting your marketing methods all the time or assessing them, if you're not adjusting, if you're not changing and updating your website frequently, like, you're missing a huge opportunity because we are in the digital age. And like I said, if you're not using an expert in that, you're doing a disservice. And I think a lot of people get scared because they're like, oh, I'm just starting out and these companies cost so much money. There are companies such as yours that have really affordable pricing for amazing work. And there are certain companies that overcharge and whatever. And quite frankly, you don't need it to be that expensive. You want to make sure that y'all are getting your value and the office is getting what they need. And that's where also having customizable packages where they can pick and say, all right, for this amount, you get this, 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 and this. For this, you get this. But also being able, like, I'm a big local business owner sender. I don't like sending to the mass marketing because you don't know. First of all, your account manager can change it any day. When I used to manage an office, we probably had 4 different account managers in a year, which means you have to re-explain your brand. You have to start from scratch with every single person. How you want, you finally get someone who understands how you speak and how you want to be represented as a company, and then gone by. So I like to work, and I think it's better to work with local, because local will do more research on your market. Local will typically work with you to say, all right, listen, we need to maybe not do so many of these ads and put it in here. And really take a look and say, what does this client need? There is no one size fits all for everybody, because no one has the same vision or brand. Everyone's creating something different.